my greatest pleasure to be the opening speaker for this marvelous conference. Thank you so much to the organizers for choosing me to do this. It is a huge responsibility as well. When I received the invitation, I've read it several times, and one thing that was a bit concerning to me, there was a phrase that said something along the lines that the organizers think that I will energize delegates. And I've read it a few times and I thought, how can I do that? And I thought, well, perhaps I can ask you to run around the room, let's put the space, we can do sit-ups, star jumps. Well, if everything else fails, we'll do that at the end. Or I thought perhaps I can give a very, very interesting presentation, so interesting to every one of you that you will be energized. Then I thought, no way, that's way too hard. So then I thought, there is a sure way to energize everybody, is to insult you all. So I will be doing that. Not the whole time, just occasionally. I'll be throwing in some remarks that you might find offensive, not directed at you personally, but directed at you as representatives of one of these two groups that I will be talking about, all while we're trying to answer this question that I'm posing: who is tasked with modernization of mathematics education? Who is? Alright, let's begin. A little bit about myself, my background. I'm originally from Russia, Yugoslav, for mathematics mostly, from St. Petersburg, beautiful place. I did my undergraduate degree there in mathematics, and it was a difficult time, perestroika and all that, very volatile times. And I was very lucky to find out that there are opportunities outside of Russia to do a PhD and be paid to do that. So I don't know how that came about. This is my lucky break in life, that I was given this opportunity to go to Rice University in Houston and do my PhD in mathematics, in low-dimensional topology. It was definitely an exciting time. The cultural clash was just tremendous. It's hard to describe going from St. Petersburg to Houston. And I won't mention anything about Texas. There might be some people from Texas here. I'll apologize to you personally later. But despite of being in Texas, Rice University was an amazingly progressive oasis, and which was a very nurturing place for staff members and PhD students. I really enjoyed my time there. I was very fortunate to approach one of the professors in the faculty at Rice, and he agreed to take me on as his student. That was Professor John Hempel. And for those of us from the low-dimensional topology, he is considered to be the father of the field of three manifolds. He's very well-known monograph called Three Manifolds has been published in 1976 and still to this day remains as a main text for the study to get into this field. So this is one of my works that I'm most proud of, and that came out of that work, high-distance Hilbert splittings of three manifolds. And after that time, being engaged in research in pure mathematics, my life turned an unexpected change due to family reasons. I moved to New Zealand to start a family. And at some point, I got a permanent teaching position at the University of Auckland and started teaching all sorts of things. Well, I would teach anything that I was told to teach at two universities in New Zealand. In my 3 kids, so 3 pregnancies. In between all this, I was just surviving in academia, just hanging in there, just teaching. And so my teaching experience, because of that, is okay. So I started teaching stage maths at Rice University while I was still a PhD student. That was just the thing they were doing. That was a complete disaster. I just struggling to even remember how awful I was as an instructor. And then I taught topology at postgraduate level several times at Massey, real analysis at Massey, stage 3, complex analysis at Auckland Uni and at Massey, and measure theory at postgraduate level as well, a few times at Massey University. And then I moved to the University of Auckland on a permanent position, teaching permanent position, and being put in charge of this large service stage 2 mathematics course from 2012. And I've been teaching it, well, I will be teaching it again next year, so that's hence the dot. And also I've been teaching financial mathematics. It's another story, but it's another side interest of mine at stage 3 postgraduate level. So quite a broad range of topics within mathematics and within the student cohorts that I've been exposed to for many, many years. So during this time, when I started at Rice in 2002, I was using a chalk and I was writing on a whiteboard. Okay. So maybe some of you still do, but to me it's just been so long in the past. And now, this semester I was teaching financial maths to 8 students present out of 60 expected. And my main concern was to deliver to the perfect lecture capture that I can produce, because most of them will be watching not the real lecture, but the lecture recording. So my reflections of change, the conference thing, is that I have observed a significant change over this time, and I predict that the change will only accelerate. This is just a start. To summarize my reflections of change is, I say here, globally, the higher education sector as a whole is very challenged to keep up with the times and reassess its sustainability in a technological era. It is to me not clear at all what is going to happen to higher education. And we're right in the middle of this. We are the change makers. And I was also very fortunate to be in a position to change my research focus to mathematics education. That was not a one-day overnight transition. That took 5 years of almost directed effort. And the reason I was able to do that is because the mathematics department at the University of Auckland contains the mathematics education unit. So the mathematics education unit's been established 25 years ago. It is very special, and not many universities have that. And it's unique, but because of this, I was able to work alongside mathematics education researchers and slowly get involved as the start as just collaborators in the research projects. Well, collaborators are, red lab rats, but slowly I upskilled myself and made the transition. So I got a permanent lectureship position as of a year and a half ago as a lecturer in mathematics education in that wonderful mathematics education unit. So that's what's happened to me, and that is because of my personal interest, driven by the changes that I have observed. Okay, so when one is giving a keynote, one should always think that it could be, it's my first keynote by the way, so, and I'm thinking it could be my last one as well, so I might as well do not hold back and say everything I've got to say at this point of life, right? So, here's my observations. I think, I'm strongly convinced that this is the case. I claim that there is a systemic issue in university mathematics education. And it can be summarized briefly as the lack of research-informed, evidence-based approaches to teaching and learning. Are you offended?
Yes.
No? Well, you should be, because you're in academia, right? You are researchers. You should be doing everything based on evidence, and everything you make in life, every decision you make should be research-informed.
No,
okay?
I am offended.
So the core driver of this is the disciplinary disconnect, in my opinion. Most research mathematicians, so by research mathematicians I mean people at the coalface of the Department of Mathematics and Statistics. You're the people who are charged with educating the students.
Yeah.
Okay? You're the coalface. Most of you are not involved and don't even know anything much about mathematics education research. Okay? You're ignorant. Sorry. You offended? No? Okay. Right. So, also what I've been observing in the last 5 years is a very interesting dynamic. There seems to be two different ways that people choose to adjust to this impending change. One group of people is just saying, oh no, I'm not going to change business as normal, this is how I've been taught, and this is how mathematics has been taught for 1,000 years, it doesn't need to change. So academic inertia is a very prevalent phenomenon. So traditional transmitting style of teaching, I think, in my opinion, is still the dominant way of instruction at most research-intense universities. And there is another group of people, those are very enthusiastic innovators, I call them enthusiastic innovators, and they have very good intentions, and they are experimenting with new modes of delivery without conducting any rigorous research alongside. And the thing is, they don't even think that they need to be doing that. Because they're the experts, they're the coalface, they've been doing this for years, they're the experts, right? They know what they're doing. So innovations are often based on integration of new technologies, some sort of new innovation, new software and gadgets, and with only anecdotal evidence about their merits. And once those things are being implemented, those people, the enthusiastic innovators, they go around and they say, I've tried this new thing, this works, it's so awesome, and they tell it to everybody they know, and you imagine what happens next. Everybody else starts doing this. Based on no evidence, not research informed, and that's how we roll. That's what's been happening for the last 10 years. Here's a cautionary tale from one of my favorite group of researchers at Loughborough University, and also the Mathematics Education Center at Loughborough University is positioned within the mathematics department. And so now it's rapidly growing. A lot of good research came out from that center, and we have many people in this room are affiliated with that center as well. Anyway, Matthew Inglis and Lara Alcock, and they are PhD students. Somali Roy, whose picture I couldn't obtain, I'm sorry, she's just not available. They've done this research that involved 2 studies. A group of researchers and practitioners, so those are the people who've been teaching real analysis for a long time, decided to create a multimedia resource that presents proofs with audio commentary and visual animations to supplement the students' learning. And it was very well designed, very well thought, a lot of effort went into it. And as you can see here, there's some theorem. I don't expect you to see what it is, but there's some statement of a theorem, there's a proof, and there's some lines of the proof. And as a student would read this proof, it will be supplemented with audio comments, some useful remarks that we teachers usually insert. So when you teach in class, let's say on the whiteboard, right? You write something and then you say a few words to give this intuitive meaning. So those were the audio comments that were inserted. It was also supplemented by animation. So some of the important things and logical connections would be highlighted using colors and arrows, and it's also had this logical structure presented. It was designed in a very thoughtful way. Okay? Many people thought about it. And they were thinking it's going to be great for the students' learning. They did this big study, they looked at the results, they measured the memory retention, whatnot, and the result was very surprising to them. The e-proof group of students who used these proofs, as opposed to the control group that used just plain same proofs, were just read from a piece of paper, that group exhibited poor retention. Exactly, this is a cautionary tale. Right? It was designed not just by one person, it was a group of people who've been teaching real analysis for a long, long time, and they thought, I can improve things because we've got technology. So then, I think Matthew Inglis came in, he said, okay, let's figure it out, we need to know what's happening. So they used eye trackers, and looked at the eye gazing and all that. So they used that analysis, trying to figure out what's happening, what are the differences in the way students process those proofs. And the second study accounted for these unexpected results through analysis by a moment, and they concluded that this extra support that is offered by e-proofs disrupts the processes by which students organize information, and thus it impaired the processes of integration of new understanding with existing knowledge. Okay, so it was, in my understanding of their research, I'm not a specialist in that, in my understanding, this audio extra narratives, when they were not present, the students who were expecting to have them, they just couldn't quite focus as much. It was detrimental to have those extra listening pieces. So that study, when I saw that study, I thought, this is big, okay? This is huge. This raises all sorts of questions. The implications are enormous, and that comes back to the question that I posed at the start. Who is responsible for modernization of education, and who is responsible for evaluation of new interventions? Yeah? Reflection of change. We innovate, we change things. Who is responsible for properly evaluating the impact of those innovations? Who? Are you? Mathematicians, research mathematicians, people at the coalface, are you responsible for evaluation? Well, you don't have the skills, right? You don't know how to conduct educational research. Yeah? Who does? Oh, research, mathematics education researchers, perhaps very close to that domain, they can at least go and learn quickly. So are they supposed to be responsible for this? Huh? Keep thinking. Alright, here's my proposal for the field. We really need to up our game. We need to bridge this disciplinary gap now, okay? Because the stakes are very high. We need to do something now. And from my perspective, I think we need to build capacity in this space. We need more researchers doing mathematics education research at the university level. And perhaps we could focus the existing researchers, perhaps we can focus our efforts in two themes, and so that if we have more people working in it, that's how we can make progress. First, theme one, I suggest we put efforts in developing frameworks for conducting evaluation research in a realistic university setting. for testing an innovation, not just any innovation, but the innovation that aims to bring insights from broader educational research. Okay, not just innovation that you think, your gut feeling is telling you is going to be good for your students. You go and somehow find out what's been done in the last 100 years from educational psychology, and look there and talk to the right people, and then you figure out what innovation you want to roll out. And then you somehow either do it yourself or collaborate with people who can actually properly conduct an evaluation research alongside. And that's how we can perhaps change things. So I'll give you an example, because it's easy to say things and not do them. Here's an example of a very basic study that I've done with my two collaborators, Barbara Kensington-Miller and Julia Novak. And I was doing that study when I didn't even know much about evaluation research or anything. It was just me, a mathematician at the coalface, trying to do something and evaluate the impact of my actions. So the study involved an attempt to evaluate our intervention in the realistic university setting. We introduced an innovation that was based on integrated insights from experimental cognitive psychology. So, just one word about methodology. So when you're going into educational research, it's very different from mathematics. Methodologies, the rules of the game is very vastly different. So this methodology, in my mind, is the most optimal for conducting research in realistic university setting. It's called design-based research, or some people shorten it to design research. There's wonderful papers and books came out, you can go find them. So that came from engineering, so the idea could be easily explained to all of you. So it is try something out, design something based on something that is research informed in our case. Try to implement it, so you got the thought process, analysis first, then thought process, thought experiment, then actual practical implementation, so that's your development cycle, microcycle. Then, as part of this, you collect your data, you analyze it. So these cogwheels are running around for a while, and then that cogwheel triggers the other research cycle. Or you can start here, you can do research cycle and then a few times, and then do the implementation. And so the analysis from here informs your development of your theory. So a big mistake not to be made is this is not just design, develop, implement, and evaluate. You have to come up with some theoretical, ontological innovation, people call it. So this is an important part of the research. So what I will talk about now is this whole microcycle, one entire microcycle, and I'm pleased to say that since then, so that was 2016, since then we had 2 more microcycles, research cycles completed, and one of them was done by a postgraduate student, Caitlin, over there, and here's a plug for her talk tomorrow after lunch. So she'll talk about that cycle, and one more she'll mention at the end of her talk as well. All right. So my theoretical contributions to this, to my research cycle, involved an attempt to capture the effectiveness and efficiency of the educational exchange in any tertiary mathematics course. You call it module or block or unit of study at university. So the unit of my consideration is an entire mathematics course. Okay? And here's a model, I call it course transaction space, CT space. I know it's a little bit strange, transactions, but we're not in financial industry, it's not about transactions, but yeah, not too far away actually if you think of it. So we've got 3-dimensional representation of it. On the x-axis I've got frequency of learners' engagement, so that's your x-axis. On the y-axis, I've got quality of learners' engagement, and the z-axis is probably a k-dimensional space. But yeah, for my study, I just put it as one z-dimension, called pedagogical practice. Okay. So, frequency of engagement, learners' engagement, that means I'm taking this course, mathematics course, and I look how many times my students are prompted or expected to engage with the material. So that means how many assignments they have, how often is my assessment structure is necessitating them to engage with the material. Okay? And the y-axis, engagement quality, that's a very tricky one. So you can, there's so many dimensions to quality, behavioral, cognitive, emotional. So in this study, we only looked at behavioral and a little bit of cognitive. And pedagogical practice, well, that's huge, right? It's your experience, your pedagogical content knowledge, everything is in there. So for this study here, I fix that z coordinate. So that z coordinate was unchanged for my study. And this whole model allowed me to try to isolate some factors that contribute to this course transaction space. Why do I call it transaction space? Because frequency of engagements, these are learners' engagements. I ask the students to do, I don't know, 5 assignments or ask them to do something. It's their transaction back to me whether or not they're engaging with that or not. So that's why I call it transactions. And the same with quality of engagement. So it is a variable, and that is also transactional. They can choose to engage less or more. Same for pedagogical practice. You can see how some people offer more from their end of the job. So the end of the deal, they offer more than others. Stuff like that. All right. Right?
2 dimensions.
What do you mean 2?
2 dimensions.
Where?
Because you fix it there.
Yes, that's right. That good point, Johan. So for the study, for this using this model, I have this my initial course position here, right? That's my course that I've been teaching for 5 years or something like that. So I'm very experienced with the student cohort. Things are not changing much, so I decided to introduce an innovation. By the way, I'm not putting units on the axis, right? This is just for me to keep track of the change. So we're not, I mean, some might put units, but I think it's very hard to do. But so that's the original course position. I'm going to change this by introducing my innovation. I'm going to increase the frequency of student engagement. I will argue that that led to increase in the y direction, while the z dimension was fixed. So in that plane, I am going to argue that I shifted this course position to the better place. So that this model, the utility of this is in isolating factors that are obviously present in this transaction space, and then capturing relative changes along the axis. So the effectiveness and efficiency of educational exchange is affected not only by the distance from the origin in this model, but also by the position of the course in the city space. So mathematics courses can be mapped, presented as a sequence in this space. You know, you can, well, for my case, I'm just looking at one course, and then I do an innovation, so that changed its position in this course, and then I look for the impacts. But you can look at the whole program that you offer and put them in that cube and see what the path looks like. All right, so design principles. Integrating the insights from experimental cognitive psychology. So that result has been studied for about 100 years. Okay, I only found out about it a few years ago. Okay, I never heard about this. And it's called the effect of distributed practice. Some researchers call it a space practice. Yeah? Some of you have heard it, good stuff. All right, so that is an effect of interstudy interval upon learning. It is measured by test performance. So what it means is that cognitive psychologists tested different study intervals. So it means as a learner is exposed to some new material, looks at it, then there's an interval, time interval, and then the same learner looks at it again. Right? So that length of the interval was varied in the experiments, and then the learning was assessed or measured by a test, just long-term memory retention, and that interval was also varied. So many studies, so meta-analysis have confirmed that the ultimate best interstudy interval for my conditions, for my students, is 1 day. So the first time they're exposed to a new material, the ultimate would be for them to engage with the same material within 1 day. Not 15 minutes, not 30 minutes, not 2 days. 1 day. That was the optimal interstudy interval. All right? And so I was just astonished that I did not know about this. When I got this teaching job, no one asked me whether or not I knew that. No one told me to go and learn this. Okay? And that's not good. Right. So the most robust finding, which I mentioned, 1 day, that's what we did. We designed a bank of 32 quizzes online, because we have technology, we can do things now easily. And they were intended to engage students in the revision of the material within that 24 hours interval. Okay. Well, almost those, just 2 out of 3 were doing that. Sometimes it was 17 hours. But anyway, so we put the assessment structure in place and gave them some reward, or else they're not going to do it. And we said, take 28, best scores will be counted towards 7% of your final grade. So it's not a huge stake. And 28 out of 32 is a very good advice that was given by Julia. That took care of all of that. My grandmother is dying and I'm sick and all that stuff. That was all taken care of in terms of logistics. It was just eating. Okay, so each quiz contains 2 questions assessing the material from the previous lecture only. So they actually engage with that material, not some other material. And so here's a quiz for you. So if each quiz, so 28 quizzes, 7%, so each quiz is worth 0.25% of the final grade. What percentage of students completed all 28 quizzes required? Yeah? So let's see, you have experience, you know your students, don't you? So who thinks it's A? Tracy,
what a pessimist. Pessimist.
All right, interesting. Who thinks it's B? Right. C? D? Right. Okay. E?
I would say I started with something from B and came all the way almost to E.
All right. So F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands up. Okay. Nice. Grace, your turn. Guess what? It was 89%. It was almost F.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely astonished. I just could not believe my eyes. You know, I just did not expect that. I was thinking more like B, but yeah, it was really working in that regard. So here's an example of a quiz. How it goes. I don't expect you to do the math and stuff. What I want you to see is what I saw before every lecture. The 84% answered correctly. So 84% of students, that number was one of the lowest ones, so they were doing really well. So, and also they had 2 attempts to do each question. So that's an important information, and they were given 30 minutes to do it. 30 minutes time was chosen by me, so they actually feel like it's their study time as opposed to test time. So they would feel like they can open their course book and revise the material. The questions were not long. Right. So the large majority of students successfully completed the quizzes with the mean score of over 90%. And so 2 attempts were given with 30 minutes time limit for each attempt. All right, so how did we try to evaluate the impact of our actions? Right. Back then, those were the only means I had, so I just did a survey at the end of the course. So in that survey, it was done paper-based, conducted in class at the end of the semester. Response rate was 98% of students who were present, with 140 individual responses. That was good data. So we asked them how much time they spent studying before the first attempt, and most importantly, if their first attempt was incorrect, so they had that feedback from the online system, then how long would they take before they do it the second time? So I wanted to know whether or not they're actually studying in between the failed attempt and second attempt. Right, so over 60% of students reported that they spent time studying before taking the first attempt, and significantly more students, 88%, responded that they will spend time studying before the second attempt. So that's significant with large effect size. Kramer's B is 0.87. And Z-test for proportions is also confirmed that. Right. And then we ask them about, we're trying to understand whether or not that innovation affects their competence-related beliefs. So we ask them a question. How much the introduction of quizzes contributed to understanding of material? And what you see here is split by grade bands. So the black one is A students, so A plus, A and A minus combined together. B is the green one, and then the gray one is C, grade band students. So the majority of students, 80% of them, reported either a somewhat or a significant impact. And that was despite no significant association between the 3 grade bands and the degree of the impact. So categorical comparison was not significant. And so this suggests that not only the quizzes enable competence building, but also that this effect extends to the C-grade band students in equal measures. That's the group of students who is usually associated with poor behavioral choices and sort of somewhat worse engagement. So then we looked at, that's where the theory comes in, how you're trying to analyze this data. So from the lens of the expectancy value theory that was developed by Eccles in 1983 and was further developed by Wakefield. So that theory posits that academic engagement, educational choices, and ultimately academic achievement is influenced by 2 categories of beliefs. One is called what they call learners' expectations of success, and the other one is learners' perception of the value of tasks. So that is a very subjective assessment from learners about the value of the task that they're completing. And it was shown by many empirical studies since 1983 that learners' subjective task value beliefs are strong predictors of engagement. Okay. So if they think that there's value in doing something, they will be more engaged to do it. Okay. So what we've done in our study, we introduced new tasks, online quizzes. The majority of students perceived this task as value-adding because they said so, contributing to their understanding. So from the perspective of this theory, and skipping a few paragraphs of argumentation, it is plausible to suggest that the introduction of quizzes enabled high levels of academic engagement. Yeah. I'm not claiming any causation. I'm saying it's plausible to suggest, given that that theory exists and it was shown that this is a predictor of improved engagement. Then, what came out from that theory is another theory, and it is a very essential construct for mathematics education, mathematics-related self-efficacy. So it is an important construct because it has been shown to be a very powerful predictor for students' achievements and learning outcomes, and as believing that one has a capacity to perform promotes academic engagement. So if someone believes that they can do it, that's their sort of self-efficacy. It's personalized quite often through their self-reported confidence in being able to complete a particular task or do something. So for mathematics education, that is a very essential construct because it is linked to so many other constructs. It's a very good predictor of many things. Right, so how do you improve your self-efficacy? Not yours, your students. How do you do that? So it has been researched extensively. So at this time, all we know that the most influential source of self-efficacy is being identified as master experience. There's like 4 main sources, but this is by far is the most important source. So what it means that previous successful performance contributes to improvement in self-efficacy, while previous failure, undermines it. Okay. So now using this theory and using it as a lens of our study, we have the data to say that large majority of students successfully completed the quizzes with the mean score of over 90%, and 133 of students out of almost 400 received 100% on all quizzes. And so that was just happening throughout the semester. 3 times a week they would just get it all right, and so this suggests that as the students were receiving this positive feedback on their performance consistently throughout the semester, it had a reinforcing effect, signaling that they were performing successfully, and that's how you gain master experience. You build it by having this feedback of successful performance over and over and over again. Okay. So again, it is plausible to suggest that the introduction of quizzes made an impact on amplifying students' master experience. And for comparison, we have the data to say that students perform significantly better on the quizzes than on the written assignments. So with a mean increase of over 12% on their scores. And so I've done some tests here. So the magnitude of the impact of this intervention that we introduced is that the quizzes provided validation of their successful learning efforts, and that validation was occurring frequently. And thus, that enabled the accumulation of their master experience. So through the master experience as being the most influential source of self-efficacy, it is possible to suggest that we were contributing to improved self-efficacy of the students. And this is a side effect finding, but it was very important to us because in our university we have a big issue with lecture attendance. Who else has an issue with lecture attendance? Raise your hands. Who hasn't? Well, those universities who don't provide lecture capture, perhaps they don't have problems with lecture attendance, but anyway, we had lecture capture introduced 5 years ago, and it's really been an issue. So anecdotal rate of attendance dropped to universal constant, we call it 30%. And now, this last year, it's even lower. So it's always an important question to look at. So we ask the students. So we see it in the previous method. We didn't have the data to compare because we don't care about attendance, so we didn't have the benchmarking data for the previous semester. It was pointless to have count them anyway. So we said in previous mathematics course, how many lectures did you attend? 5 point like it's scared none, only some, about half, most, and almost all. And then we said in Maths 208, so that's this course with intervention, how many lectures did you attend? And then we said, did the pre-lecture quizzes affect your attendance of lectures in Maths 208 this semester? Might as well ask. So what they said, so self-reported increase in attendance was confirmed using categorical comparison, large effect size. So 27% of students admitted that pre-lecture quizzes in the trial semester affected their attendance, so they said, yes, I attended more because of the quizzes. And so the largest effect was reported in the B grade band. So 36 of those B students attributed the increased attendance to the introduction of quizzes. So that's quite interesting. And A and C were kind of similar, 23 and 28%. So only 3 students said they attended less, all from the A grade band. And so overall, again, it is plausible to suggest that the introduction has made a positive impact on educational exchange in terms of improved lecture attendance. We're all trying to figure out how to improve attendance. Well, if you introduce quizzes, it kind of, and my explanation is that they're reasonable creatures, right? They choose, do I come to a live lecture or do I have to watch recording later in the evening because the quiz is due by 8 o'clock in the morning? So I have to do it at some point, so I might as well show up. That's probably what's happened, but I don't know for sure. Right, focus groups interviews, we conducted them after the end of the semester, and although small, 5 students, not representative of the whole class, but it was interesting to get some insights from that. Focus groups are very insightful. I recommend them strongly. So they commented that they were very committed to the completion of the quizzes, and they told us how they worked. They said that there was some collaborative environment sometimes involved, needs to be further investigated. And they explain that they perceive those quizzes as added value adding. So they said it's a regular revision and practice. And here's a quote from the students that kind of summarizes this whole theme that came out from there. I think that for some subjects, it is so easy to just turn up to lectures and to just turn up to tutorials and do the work, and then if you forget about it until the next week, then that's fine. But the quizzes, in some way, you get home in the evening and you're like, oh, I've got to do my quiz. So you map stuff out. So you're more inclined to do things. Yes, it motivates me a bit more. So unanimously, all of the students agreed that the incorporation of those quizzes was a good innovation, and they suggested it should be rolled out more widely. We also interviewed the tutor. We were in a very fortunate position. The tutor was employed to facilitate 10 out of 13 tutorial streams. That's very rare. The student was just in between undergraduate studies and PhD studies, had nothing to do, so we employed him to run this, to run 10 tutorial streams, which is about 300 students. Every week he would see that all 300 students. But this tutor also had previously worked as a tutor for the same course for 4 prior semesters, so it was just gold in terms of getting that data. And it was him who came to me and he said, what's going on with 208? I said, what's going on? He said, the first tutorial was just so different than to the previous years. I thought, what do you mean? And he told me, well, I said, how about we interview you formally and get you on record with focus. That's what he said. I did definitely notice that there was a smaller proportion of people coming into tutorials that had absolutely no idea what any of the questions were. So a lot of time in previous semesters it would become quite clear to me that people did not know much about what was going on, or because either they'd been to class but didn't really pay attention or haven't gone over the notes. And so often I would explain a few things on the board at the beginning to get them started. That was last year. But this semester it was easy on me. I could help them more in terms of the level that they should be at instead of starting from scratch. So, in the past, we only had 3 assignments per semester. So what was happening, the first assignment was due in week 4. So the students would come to lectures and look at the material and then just forget about it until they are forced to open them up again, probably in week 4, to get the assignment done. Those 3 weeks, they would just be completely lost. Coming tutorials, completely lost. And so, having those quizzes changed that behavior. Right. Further evidence to support the claim that the engagement was perhaps improved, or the quality of it, it's final grades comparison now. I'm admitting the limitations of this approach, different cohorts of students, but there were so many similarities that it's worth to take note of this data. So we had the same course coordinator, we had the same instructor for large part of the semesters, we had the same course books, same all the other materials, same tutorial questions as before, identical split into lecture topics. This course is a service course, it runs like a well-oiled machine, so it was just the same. And the same external assessor, and the assessor was very good, and his main goal was to ensure that the exam was at least as hard as previous semester. That was deliberately done. And so, overall, significant shift in course grades across the grade bands, from reduction in proportion of fails to increase by almost identical amount in A band grades. Okay. And then to answer Johan's question, Johan over there, yeah, he's asked me a clever question at PME, South Africa. He said, but they did a lot better in the quizzes. Of course, you have an increase in funding grades. I said, yeah, Johan, you're so right, you're so clever. But if you account for this increase, the 7% that was awarded for quizzes, and they did really much better than on assignments. But it would still account that it still is significant increase. So, in summary, incorporation of reason was a relatively small change in the course delivery and can significantly improve the course coordinates in the CT space, indicating a more efficient and effective educational exchange. And so we optimized the effect of distributed practice, and we argued that we improved the quality of learners' engagement. So, back to this methodology. So we've done a whole microcycle, implemented it, analyzed it, and back to the research cycle, our ontological innovation here. And if you need to know more about what ontological innovation is, so that's the work that concerns that city space model and the analysis through the theoretical lenses. So that's in that cycle. All right, so the second theme is that I think should be happening, and we should all have concerted efforts into developing that theme, research theme that's not very well developed. There is a lot of good stuff happening in that space, but it's not published, it's not disseminated. So we need to investigate the mechanisms involved in successful professional development projects that are happening in mathematics departments. I know they are, because I talk to people, and in every department there will be some sort of PD developments or something, but we need that to be done in a proper way as a research project, so we all know and can build on it and make things better. So I think this largely explored area of research, if developed, can potentially have a major impact on the university mathematics education. All right, so and just to finalize, I don't have time to talk about this professional development project that's been run in our department, and a lot of publications came out of this. That's been Greg taking selfies in Singapore, and the papers been published a lot from this project. I just put 3 because, yeah, I don't have space. And that is called the Development and Analysis of the Teaching of Undergraduate Mathematics Professional Development Discussion Group. Talk to Greg if you need to know more, or read those papers. And I'm pleased to say that this project is now on the 2nd stage, and we've changed the theoretical perspective because Barbara Jaworski, also from Loughborough University, came down to visit me, and she's now my collaborator. And we are doing it without changing the process, but changing the theoretical perspective. So I've been collecting data for the whole year, and I'm going to see here in January. I'm going to Loughborough in January from New Zealand. All right, this is how much I'm committed to. And this is a picture of our current group of that participating in this Data 2 project. And these are all members of the mathematics department. These are what we call face of teaching and learning. And we have meetings in my office, over a cup of tea, chocolates, informal. We watch each other's lectures, videos, and we talk about them. All right. And that's been a project with a track record of success. It's been going on since 2009. So that means we struck gold. We're doing something that is working, and the testament of the fact that it's going on so long is a testament to that. Anyway, so that's to come, and thank you so much for your attention. And I use the space as an advertisement for a PhD scholarship. But anyway, I'll just leave it there. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. That was, I forgot to say at the beginning that what a fitting speaker Judy Patterson's speaker was, having Tanya here, because Judy Patterson received it, one of the papers that was up there was written with Tanya and Judy. And Judy was very instrumental in getting Tanya into mathematics education and encouraging her. And I think Tanya said on many occasions that she probably wouldn't be here without Judy's help and support. So a really fitting acknowledgement of Judy's legacy, I think, on Delta and mathematics education. I'm going to take my role as the chair here just to say, you talked about design research, and I think it's a really nice theory to appeal to research mathematicians and engineers, because they like the idea that it's got that kind of iterative process, but also it's got a nice machine. You gave us the picture. It's got a machine that they can use. It epitomises the kind of mathematical engineering kind of focus. But you also showed us quite a number of other educational lenses, case studies, focus groups, the qualitative nature that goes alongside that design research. So thank you for showing us that. So now an opportunity for people to ask questions, and there's one hand up at least already. So we've got a bit of time before morning tea, so we've got some time for questions. So 2 minutes for questions. Do you want to come and ask a question? Or you...
Oh, I can do it here. I have 2 questions. One is, what software did you use for the online quizzes? And the second one is, what proportion of the quizzes were on past material, so that you got that spaced practice? So what proportion of the quizzes was new material? What proportion was past material?
Okay, I'll answer the second question because you heard it, right? So what proportion of the material was on quizzes assessing the material not from the previous lecture? None. I mean, all of the quizzes had 2 questions assessing the material from the previous lecture only.
Okay, so there's spaced practice.
Yeah, so the spaced practice comes from the fact that they're exposed to this new material during the lecture, and then there's they are presented with a quiz that's asking them to re-engage with the same material. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the first question was software. It was just our learning management system called Canvas. But I know that the University of Otago heard about this project, and they've done it in. They didn't even have Moodle or Canvas. Moodle would work fine as well. They had like some homegrown system and they still did those quizzes and they work and they love it. So yeah. Any other questions? Yes, friends.
Yeah, the academic integrity research literature shows that there's basically no task that students won't outsource, no matter how small. That's not a joke, that's actually true. I guess that because you saw a positive effect, you probably discount that, but do you think that's going on?
Good, very good question. That's for the next microcycle of research it has to be done because that came out from the focus groups as well. At least one student commented that there was some collaborative nature. Now we are trying to, so given that research that we can't stop it essentially. I mean, all of our students come through this training of academic integrity, they have to roll into the course and do it online and complete it. So they are informed that this is not okay. But research. But so what we're doing now, we're just going to build up those banks of quizzes. So the one question, but it will be 20 versions of the same question. So even though there's collaboration happening, they'll still have the numbers will be different, so they'll have to engage themselves. Yeah, good question.
One more question, I think, and then one.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have the ability, or did you consider just comparing the final exams as that if you value that as a summative assessment, then you wouldn't have the concern of the different weighting of how the grades were calculated? So did you look at just a comparison of the final exams from the
Yes,
before?
yes, we did. So that was significant. That's the component of assessment that the difference came from. That was the most significant. The final exams, they did a lot better in the final exams. Yeah, but it's in my mind comparing final exams is so dodgy because you can change a question. You think they're the same, but for the students they're not the same. It's from the point of research, it's very shaky grounds to compare two different exams and claim something out of it. So yeah, I guess overall course assessment combined is probably a better thing to do. Yeah. Right.
Thank you, Tanya, for, I think, I wasn't insulted, I was challenged, I think, and I think it's set the conference off really well by challenging us to think about what we're all here for, which is critical reflection on our teaching and teaching of mathematics. And thank you very much for that introduction, for your presentation. So thank you very much, and I think...
Yes, and thank you to Greg for introducing you. And Tanya, we're giving out gorgeous little clockers to our keynote speakers.